Alright, so today I'll go over my current migration of my Neovim configuration from Vimscript to Lua. So I'm in my configuration directory and I've done a tree operation so you can kind of see what my file structure looks like. As always, we still have our init.vim, so I do nvim init.vim. The only important line here is this very first line, and what this will allow us to do is run all of our Lua config files. So basically the Lua keyword is a function and it takes the rest of the string as Lua. So this is actually valid Lua code. It's basically saying source init.lua. So if we get out of here, you can kind of see all of our Lua files are within this Lua directory, and Neovim can recognize that. So we just jump into our Lua directory. Let's take a look at some of these files. There's only a couple of interesting files I want to go over today. First of all is obviously init.lua. And you can kind of see here, I've kind of compartmentalized all of the different things that my plugins should. I've kind of compartmentalized all of the different functions of my configuration into different files. So I have plugins, options, setup, keybinds, and my status line. And over here I also set my color scheme. But let's jump into the plugins. Over here I have a new plugin manager actually. One thing that you might immediately notice is that it's completely written in Lua now, so there's no more Vimscript. And the plugin manager I'm using is called packer.nvim, and it's written in completely Lua, and that's great. And the way Packer works is it builds a compiled Vimscript file. So if we go back out, you can kind of see that there was a plugin directory and a packer compile.vim. So Packer will actually generate this file, which it will then use to manage your plugins. So this is basically the syntax for the plugin manager. You guys can just use this as a guide and replace the plugins with whatever you're using. You can also go to the GitHub page to check out some other options, like for example, using a certain branch of a GitHub repository or using a certain release or lazy loading, things like that. I've also noticed that I've disabled some of the heavier packages such as tree sitter and LSP config because I'm not really in the mood to deal with that, and plus there's a bunch of errors that I'm just not in the mood to take care of. But yeah, this is basically the syntax, and one thing to note is that when you save this file, or when you make changes to this file I should say, you're going to run packer compile, and that'll basically update that file. And the way you actually update your plugins is, well, there's packer install to install your plugins, and then you can run update or sync along with clean. So this is kind of similar to plug clean, all that, but you just want to do a plug, or sorry, I just said plug. You want to do a packer update to update all your plugins. So yeah, that's that. If I go out of here, let's also go over the options. So this is a list of basically all the options I'm using. You'll also immediately note that there are a bunch of different types of kind of objects. So there's vim.o, vim.wo, and to put it shortly, vim.o controls the global options, vim.wo controls the window specific options, vim.bo controls buffer specific options, and then you have vim.g, which is global variables, and vim.b, which is like your local or buffer variables. Okay, well, you might be asking, how do I know which one to use for a certain option? For example, ruler, right? And there's a very quick way to tell. So for example, let's go to tab stop, right? We'll do a tab stop, right? So we'll search the help documentation for tab stop. Let's see, there we go. And we can see that it's local to buffer. That means that we should use a buffer specific option. So if we go up here, you can see that we have a buffer specific option. But for all the buffer specific options, I also saw this online, you're also going to want to set a global option as well. So for any buffer specific option, also put the O without the B, right? So this is vim.bo, this is just vim.o. That should be pretty simple. You also might run into some other ones, for example, help, hidden. So hidden is a global variable, right? So you're going to want to use the global flag for that. And let's just say help wrap. It's local to window, which means you're going to want to use WO like I do here. It's pretty simple. And That's pretty much that. So basically, if your original option used some sort of string, you're going to obviously use a Lua string. If it was a number, you're fine off using a Lua number. And if it was like a toggleable option, such as term GUI colors, well, we're just going to use the word true or false, right? And also going down to these global and buffer variables, same thing. Vim.g and then the name of your variable. We'll set that variable to whatever it was. Sweet. Okay. Let's check out binds.lua to get a taste of how you can define key bindings in Lua. What you want to pay attention is to this. So on this bottom line, we have a vim.api.nvim set key map, which is what you're going to want to do. This first parameter defines the mode. In this case, it'll be the terminal mode, which is represented by the T. For example, in this one, which I commented out, the N will represent normal mode. You also have the actual key you'll press, so that'd be this, and then what key combination I'll actually expand to, right? So in this case, this one's a pretty common one, which will use escape to get you out of insert mode in the terminal. And in this particular format, you actually put the options you want at the end as the last parameter, right? So you have a Lua table, which will represent the options. For example, common options are no remap and silent, and you'll just add that as the final parameter to the function. Also note that you can define many commands simply by using vim.api.nvim command, and you'll basically run a Vimscript command from within Lua. So if you're really about porting everything to Lua, but you still want to be able to run some Vimscript code, that's one way you can do it. And I believe you can also use vim.cmd. There might be some differences that I'm not aware of, but you should be fine using vim.cmd. Like, that's pretty much the standard. Now, if you remember from last video, we had a lot of code relating to Lua, which we put within our vimrc. Finally, we can actually have those in their actual Lua file. Although at the moment I had this all commented out since I'm not using the relevant plugins that this file is meant for. But just know that you can do that. And I recommend you guys start off simply by porting things one by one, because it could be very intimidating to port a lot of stuff over at once. And as you can see here, I haven't even ported everything over to Lua simply because it's easier for me to write Vimscript, since Vimscript was literally meant for Vim. Now, all of this is possible to be ported to Lua. I just don't have the time for it right now. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments or find a way to contact me. And have fun porting everything to Lua.